So on Amnesty's main website, they've got those sort of 3 steps, the research, the campaigns and the lobbying, and then they've got the action. How have you seen that actually filter down to stopping or at least reducing human rights abuses? Does it work? How does it work? What's been your experience?
How it works, sort of, I don't know. I just know, and certainly, well, there's at 2 levels. In terms of sort of prisoners who have been released, I mean, you can never, it's very difficult to, in terms of cause and effect, did Amnesty cause the release? Sure. It's like the sort of bad joke that when this refugee arrives in the United States and he's asked if he has to prove he has a well-founded fear of being persecuted. And he says, well, how do I do that? He says, well, how about a letter from your dictator? You tend not to get letters from your dictators. Dear Mr. Shipsey, thank you very much for campaigning all these years. As a result of your activities, we've decided to release Joe X. It tends not to happen like that. But, you certainly do know that even the most despotic regimes are sensitive to their international reputation. They have to trade in the world. They have to, and I suppose that's one of the, I'm not here to endorse President Biden, but that's one of the disturbing parts of the Trump era and legacy, was that the despots of the world felt they didn't really have to look out for human rights because nobody was holding them, to account. And, that's important. And the other side of it is prisoners who have been released. Some of them, don't know. They get the letters arrive to the prison and they don't get to them, but some go to their families. And just the fact that somebody is thinking about them is extraordinary. And just like Amnesty started in 1961, there's a wonderful Russian poet called Osip Mandelstam who died. He had the bad fortune to arrange a dinner party for 6 people, and he recited a poem that he had created referring to Stalin as the butcher of Georgia. Somebody snitched, and poor Osip ended up first in internal exile and then in the Gulag and dying. But his widow waited until after Stalin died and wrote a 2-part autobiography called Hope Against Hope and Hope Abandoned. But the feeling that they had was that, nobody, I'm sure friends of theirs cared, but there was nobody to take action on their behalf. They suffered and died and were persecuted without anybody sort of caring. And at least, since Amnesty has been involved, and obviously you can't reach everybody, at least there are lots of people working on behalf of individuals. And that was the genius of Peter Benenson, the Amnesty founder, who had the idea to launch what was first known as the Appeal for Amnesty in 1961 on the 28th of May 1961, but just that he would get individuals to write individually to governments to appeal on behalf of individuals. And it's something that's always appealed to me about Amnesty, is that it's very individual focused. It's not ideologically driven. I mean, obviously there are right-wing governments think we're leftists, and there are leftist governments think we're rightists. So when they both hate you, you're probably about right. But it's always appealed to me that it's been focused on the individual and individual sort of human rights. Because, when we talk about, the real peril of the last century was the belief in the collective good. But the collective good resulted in millions dying of persecution and starvation in China and Russia and many other countries. So Amnesty's focus on the individual and on the individual's rights is something that signals it out, and it's something that appealed to me from the get-go.
Wow. I love what you said there, which is that standout idea that appealed to you, which is that idea that you can take collective action and move a massive boulder forward, but it takes individuals to do that, and individuals who can help other individuals. So it's not sort of directly trying to work with other bodies or organizations or countries necessarily, but trying to secure the freedoms and secure the kinds of rights that should be afforded down to the granular level, people on the ground every day, which is, I think, amazing when you think about the sorts of organizations and corporations that exist today, which are all about, like you mentioned, collective power and less of a focus on the individual, but more on the sort of the system that needs to be sort of preserved at all times. So it's almost about, similar to that idea of art being able to give, a voice or hope to the hopeless or to the voiceless.
Yeah, it does. And the other, I suppose, good development in Amnesty in the last sort of 10 years, and not without sort of teething pains, was the decision to sort of decentralize from London and to form regional hubs, 3 in the Americas, 3 in Africa, and 3 in Asia. So you have, the research and lots of the campaigning for Southern Africa being directed from Johannesburg and not London. And that's enormously significant. Not just because, when you're closer to the ground, you're reading the local papers and you've a better chance of being informed, but in terms of the talent pool that you have access to. If you're in New York or London or someplace like that, you obviously have all work permits and everything to overcome. So you tend to have a more sort of a less diverse pool of people to work with.
Yes.
That's been enormously important. But specifically in terms of what art and artists do, it's not just the sort of obviously the celebrity ones, when Sting tweets or put something on his Facebook, or Peter Gabriel or Bono or Edge. It's enormously important because others listen to them and follow them. But it's also something about the sort of nature of art and the nature of good art, and how much it is part of the best part of the human condition. It's the excellent part of us. And my hero of, well, obviously there are literary heroes that I'd never met. I never met Beckett, I never met Camus, never met Huxley, but Seamus Heaney, the late Irish poet, was a dear friend until he died all too young in 2013, and he wrote what is Amnesty's poem anthem from the Republic of Conscience. But he also spoke about the role of art and the ability of art to change minds and to really have that impact in a way that laws and arguments about the rights of human rights can't.
Mm. I love that. It's almost as if what you mentioned, the best part or the most, that kind of raw creativity that is in art that can appeal to each of us, the best part of the human condition, is something that can be used to combat some of the worst parts of the human condition or the worst types of behavior. Now, whether or not that, provides the kind of macro change that everybody always wants to see, that's for history to decide, I suppose. But with a focus on the individual and trying to get progress done on a day-to-day basis, I suppose that's more doable.
It is. The only thing is, there's another of my sort of literary heroes is Tolstoy. And one of the things I remember most about War and Peace was Pierre, who was the protagonist and heroes. But he makes the point, even in the big battles, the turning points in those big battles can be, a French corporal picking up a standard as they're retreating, turning around and rallying them to go forward. So that sort of individual spark, even if it's at a really micro level, can have the macro sort of knock-on effect. And I think that's true also in terms of the way art, can inspire, and writers can inspire, and musicians and poets can motivate and inspire people.